Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey, and a gooder morning to you. Gooder? Did I say that? December 4th. I'm not sure what that was in relationship to. We have a wintry mix falling at the moment. Mother Nature incapable of making up its mind whether to sleet, snow, or rain on us. And the Judiciary Committee Impeachment Inquiry hearing beginning as I speak. Today, Democrats really don't put on a show. They're serious, They're serious. So they're doing this. I heard someone say that today's hearing will be a wonderful opportunity for the American people to learn why the Founding Fathers put impeachment in the Constitution, what the historical contours were, where they were coming from, how they defined impeachable behaviors. And so it's going to be a bunch of law professors arguing the point. The thing is that is what you would do if you're serious people beginning this serious task of impeachment of a sitting president. And Democrats tend to be more serious, it's true, not given to showmanship. And so they will build their case, and they will have the legal definitions parsed today. And it is true that most Americans don't want to, they don't have time, they're not that interested, and Republicans have no intention of cooperating in any way to keep this a effort to arrive at a truth. I don't know. They'll make it into a show. And I don't know. I'm sorry. I wish I were more upbeat for you, but I'm not. I'm just not. Jennifer Rubin, who used to be a Republican, writing in the Washington Post, is a serious person. She clearly practically swooned at the report that came out of Adam Schiff's Intelligence Committee. Most people, of course, won't read it. And like a true serious person, she says this report has got pizzazz to spare. Well, only if you're, again, a serious person. So you tell, here's the beginning of the report, the executive summary. President Trump's scheme subverted U.S. foreign policy and undermined our national security in favor of two politically motivated investigations that would help his presidential reelection. And on and on. Now, that's, okay, that's a pretty good summation of what most of us know happened, because, in fact, we have the somewhat transcript of the call. We have the president himself. We have Mick Mulvaney saying, yeah, get over it. And as Rubin says, none of these facts are contradicted by anything. That's what all the people we saw being trotted out in Schiff's committee made clear. There is agreement on what the facts are. But the report that came out that made serious people like Jennifer Rubin swoon and find pizzazz was the fact that we had not known that the committee also had, courtesy of Verizon and I'm not sure what other, Verizon and somebody else, had these phone records showing, we don't know the content of the calls. We simply know that Giuliani is calling the Office of Management and Budget, which ordered the hold on the aid. And then there were calls being made by the ranking Republican member of the Intelligence Committee, the loathsome conspiracy mongerer, Reverend Devin Nunes, Representative Devin Nunes. And that he actually was talking to one of these clowns, friend of Giuliani, who's been indicted by the Justice Department, Lev Parnas. What was Devin Nunes talking to him about? And as Rubin points out, Nunes then obviously now becomes a fact witness himself. And his efforts to disrupt the hearing and toss out one conspiracy theory after another obviously begins to, as she puts it, reek of self-interested obstruction of the committee's work. Schiff himself, in an understatement, said, "It is, I think, deeply concerning that at a time when the President of the United States was using the power of his office to dig up dirt on a political rival, that there may now be evidence that there were members of Congress, and in fact," he doesn't say this, members of Congress, in fact, the ranking Republican member of the House Intelligence Committee, that may have been complicit in the activity that is being investigated. What a den of gutter dwellers these people are. Really extraordinary. Nunes has the gall to sit there on high, knowing full well he was party to the potentially criminal conduct going on, part of, enabling, aiding the whole scheme. Lawrence Tribe, the Harvard constitutional scholar, says this: "The evidence of those suspicious Giuliani phone calls with these thugs reinforces the overwhelming case that the American president was directing a criminal conspiracy to conscript U.S. military aid and the powers of his office to benefit himself and his own re-election at the expense of national security. If this is not impeachable and removable conduct, we are done as a constitutional republic." I can see Lawrence Tribe has the same sort of sense of this whole thing that I do. The report shows that all of this was going on and all was understood and known by Mick Mulvaney, the chief of staff and the head of OMB, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Secretary of Energy Rick Perry. So the odd thing that came out yesterday with this report is it shows that, we might have suspected it, but the phone calls certainly underscore it more. Seems to show that Nunes was in the middle of this plot from the beginning, which might explain why he was trying to do everything he could to undercut Schiff during the hearings. Jennifer Rubin suggests, and I think there is no doubt, that Nunes needs to appear and provide testimony under oath. He is not immune from subpoenas as a fact witness. He needs to be sworn in and have to testify. So, I don't know. She ends her piece with this. The Intelligence Committee's report is a triumph of clarity and thoroughness. Now, to make the best possible case, the House should press to hear from newly revealed witnesses who have knowledge of Trump's action and potentially participated in the wrongdoing. If current cabinet members, such as Pompeo, do not appear, the House should consider impeaching them as well. The stonewalling must end. And it is quite clear that Trump and the White House feel that simply by refusing to comply in any way with Congress's constitutional duty to get to the bottom of this thing, that in and of itself, of course, constitutes reason for removal. It's the boldness, the audacity of their criminality that is so breathtaking, and still is to me. I mean, I'm used to it now. I understand that's what they do. I remember when I first started years ago now to see how they would disregard reality, lie to the American people, I mean, in ways that were patently absurd. That these are people with no shame. These are people with great power who intend to keep it at all costs. Yeah. Barbara writes, but Devin Nunes claimed last night that he didn't remember speaking to Lev Parnas, the thug associate of Giuliani's. The phone records show frequent calls between Nunes and Parnas. Nunes actually said, I don't know why I'd be getting calls from random people. He acted like he didn't even quite know who Parnas was. One of the calls was something like 9 minutes long. I don't know about you, but I don't talk to somebody for 9 minutes and then have no recollection of a phone call with them or suggest I don't know them. As the president over in London yesterday was saying, he didn't know Prince Andrew. You could do an entire exhibit of photos of Trump with Prince Andrew. Again, it's that level of lying that is what frightens me, because it is Orwellian. We're getting, to my mind, the first experience of what it's like to live in a despotic country where you are told what you are seeing, even if it is the opposite of what your own eyes are telling you you're seeing. Where up is down and black is white. And this is all done with a straight face. And then there are others who immediately parrot, yes, black is white. Up is down. War is peace. It's moved out of the books, out of Orwell and 1984 and all kinds of other dystopian novels. It has moved out of that into our daily lives. And I guess the thing about it, other than the fear it engenders in me, that I find so, well, damn it. I forgot what I was going to say. Jesus, do you hate that? It engenders fear, but it engenders a sense, I remember, of powerlessness. If you are dealing with people who will look at you and lie, knowingly, I mean, they know you know it's a lie, but they just keep saying it. How do you deal with that? It used to be, at least through my life, and it spans a number of decades, that there was a agreed upon fact. And we all understood. Remember the late Senator Patrick Moynihan saying famously to somebody, again, decades ago, you are entitled to your own set of opinions, but you are not entitled to your own set of facts. And at the time when he uttered it, everybody just thought, we laughed at that because he was calling somebody out so obviously. And now, the party that controls our federal government, except for the House of Representatives, the party that controls the Senate of the United States, the executive branch of the United States, the Supreme Court of the United States, that party, that's the up is down, black is white. Don't believe what your own eyes and ears are telling you. That's that party. And if you're not frightened by that, I mentioned in the last few days that American life expectancy has been going down this century, while the life expectancies of all other industrialized, wealthy nations have been going up. And I want to add on to that, and this comes with information from Paul Krugman. My life expectancy is in line with European countries and others. My life expectancy has not gone down. Probably yours has not either. One of the reasons is that people who live in blue states, which we really don't, people who live in blue states, people who live on the coasts, mostly blue states, their longevity has not gone down. But when you add in their longevity with the longevity from those Americans who live in red states, states run by Republicans, it's they who are seeing their life expectancy drop. Just 30 years ago, 1990. God, that's 30 years ago. Just 30 years ago, the red states and the blue states, those same states, had the same life expectancy just 30 years ago. But since then, life expectancy in the states won by Hillary Clinton has risen more or less in line with all the other advanced nations of the world, while in states won by Trump, in fact, at this point in America, if you live in a blue state, you can expect to live more than 4 years longer than somebody trapped in a red state. Why is that? Well, public policy plays a role. When Republicans run things, they have certain policies in place, and when Democrats run things, they do too. When Democrats run things, lo and behold, people thrive. Republicans run things, people die, literally. The blue states in the last 10 years, 15 years, expanded Medicaid, drastically reduced the number of uninsured people who live in their states, while almost all red states did not. The growing gap in education also plays a role. Blue states have better educated people. Better educated people live longer than less educated people. Ask the actuarial table people. Now, obesity is greater in red states. Alcoholism, greater. Opioid deaths, greater. What are called, these deaths of despair, right? Is that what they're called? And what's extraordinary is that these people who are dying turn away from the party that would help them and still stay in the deadly embrace of the party that is destroying them. Now, if you ask our Attorney General, who is becoming one of the more frightening members of the Trump cabal, if you ask Bill Barr, who in speech after speech keeps saying things like the reason America's going down and the reason people are dying here is the collapse of traditional values brought on by these secularists. But see, that's not true. You won't find a more secularist area than Europe. They're very secularist, not religious, don't have those same right-wing ideas of what family values are. They're living a lot longer. They have not seen a comparable rise in deaths of despair. That's a uniquely American thing. And these horrors are concentrated in the states that voted for Donald Trump and well may do so again. And those of us who are in secular blue states, and I am not, we're living longer. Try getting that through Trump voters' heads. See, but the problem is it involves facts. verifiable facts. And they have an aversion to them. They have like almost an allergic reaction to them. Here's a sense of what a red state does. And here's one of the worst states to live in for your health, West Virginia, our neighbor. I just saw this little item, and it made me want to cry, if you want to know the truth. Prison inmates in West Virginia. This shows the kind of cruelty of the Republican Party. Prison inmates in West Virginia have been told there are now 60,000 approved books that they can read in e-book form. Well, that sounds wonderful. Sounds like something a blue state might do. Oh, there's a catch. Yeah, they can read these books in e-book form, but they will be charged 5 cents per minute they spend reading the books. These are the same inmates who are paid 4 cents an hour for prison work. They pay him 4 cents an hour, but charge him 5 cents a minute for trying to broaden their world behind bars. How cruel, how evil do you have to be to institute such a policy? All right. Well, I want to note the fact that Kamala Harris has pulled out. I think it was smart of her. She wasn't going to win. And she needs to guard her Senate seat, I think. But the reality is we are now left with pretty much white people. The next debate will be devoid of color. And racism seems to be the driver of a lot of people who vote against their own interests. Because racism is something that wonderful Republican Party traffics in, more so than it ever has. And those folks have reason. Here's another demographic fact for you. In nearly 100 American metropolitan areas and cities, whites are in the majority if you're just looking at people 45 years or older. Non-whites make up the majority if you're looking at people 45 and younger. So tell me, who does the future belong to? The all-white Republican Party? And maybe their move toward autocracy and despotism is their calculation that the only way they will maintain power in this country, since they are the white party, is to simply seize it in any way they can. The most common age, I'm not sure what that means in terms of average or something, the most common age for a white person in the United States is 58. For non-whites, it's 27. So you tell me if the Republicans haven't figured out that the only way they can maintain even a modicum of power is for them to rely on despotism, criminal activity, anything.
We're talking demographics?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just. But they figure they got a generation or so, and they're just gonna like grab power and hold it. There's gonna be a.
That seems to be the strategy right now.
That
It's
is the strategy. It's the only thing they have.
How to hold on to their older, whiter.
They can't do it
base.
democratically.
No.
They cannot do it democratically.
Yeah. No, and
so
no.
they've got to suppress the
I mean-
vote.
I mean,
They've got to
they
rely
could
on the
if they-
help of
if they-
Russia.
yeah,
They've got to lie, obfuscate,
gerrymander,
gerrymander,
on the
suppress
Senate,
voters.
yeah.
Right. That is. There it is.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I've been listening. Oh, well, I actually just listened to. There's a really good podcast LA Times put out about Prop 187 in California, which was this anti-immigrant bill that was passed. It was.
How long ago was that?
This was in the 90s.
Yeah.
I'm
remembering it.
Yeah. Pete
Yeah.
Wilson, if you.
Yes,
yeah.
I do remember.
And it's just so funny because at the time in the 90s, California was still like a purple state. You know, it elected a Republican governor. It was a lot more even in terms of its representation in Congress, and it had history of electing Republicans like Nixon and Reagan and
look at their presidents. The Republican presidents came out of California.
That's right. Two of the most famous ones.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most revered ones is a coastal elite from Simi Valley,
Hey,
California.
Speaking of that, I mentioned this yesterday. Remember how a Republican couldn't speak without intoning the name of Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
You don't hear his name
Yeah.
at all.
Well, yeah, because it's done. It's like Trump now. Like
That's
lot
right,
of a
but
lot
Reagan wouldn't have any standing with these people.
No, probably not.
Not?
No. And but anyway, it was all about how this anti-immigrant bill, which basically made it illegal for undocumented immigrants to receive any kind of public service, and that included going to public school. And it was actually never instituted. It was I think almost all of it was struck down by the courts before it was instituted. But it still won on the ballot, and it was still incredibly popular in California when it was passed at the time. But a lot of Democratic politicians, and especially a lot of Latinos in California, have kind of said it's like the reason they got involved, and it's the reason that they basically were flocked to the Democratic Party. And more and more of that just continues on to this day. It's like a repeat of that. And I don't think the Republican Party really understands the damage they're doing to Latinos and to immigrants, really, or even children of immigrants, in terms of trying to attract them to their party. Latinos are would have been very attractive
to the
Republican Party.
Yeah.
Many of them are very religious.
That's right.
They are
Socially conservative.
Yeah, typically anti-abortion.
Yeah.
They are also anti-LGBT for the
Yeah.
most part. That's kind of changing a little bit, but yes, they were
ripe for the picking.
And even
But
economically, because they're so entrepreneurial.
That's right, right.
And
hardworking,
yeah, and they
family-oriented.
really are, yes.
And yet the Republicans couldn't get past their skin.
I actually think, and I'm not trying to take away blame from the Republicans on this issue, but I think they got scammed, and I think they got tricked by white nationalists. Basically, if you go back to Prop 187, it's so funny. This bill, there were these two Republican strategists that lived in Orange County at the time, and they basically got convinced by this guy to pass this bill. They didn't even care necessarily about the bill that much. They just wanted to win a proposition. Because California has these really weird laws that basically anybody can get a proposition on the ballot, and they just wanted to win something. They just wanted to win a proposition, so they put all their efforts behind this Prop 187, which guess what was originated from the Federation for Immigration, the FAIR, which is an anti-immigrant group that's funded by white nationalists and was created by a white nationalist. And it feels like the same exact thing. Trump did that same exact strategy where he was so focused on he was so focused on getting this like anti-immigrant thing. The whole anti-immigrant movement was started in the 70s by John Tanton, white nationalist, funded by Cordelia Scaife May, and our own.
Pittsburgh.
But it's all about just like a white nationalist thing, and it's like if they would have just ignored the white nationalists, they'd probably be. I mean, it'd be a lock. They would just control everything. I think it's actually really damaged them. Hopefully, it will continue to damage them, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, fine. Taken down by their own. Hoist on their own petard. If it's their racism, that gets them. Gets them what? They own the government right now.
Right now, yeah. And they probably still fight for longer and longer, but I think by the time, 20 years, 30 years, it's going to be different. The country's going to change its demographics continually.
We'll see if there's a country left.
Look at white people get so scared about that. Oh no, the demographics. It's like, they're the same. Everyone's the same, by the way. They just like, it's not like if there's a bunch of Mexican Americans, it's going to be like some hellhole. It's so crazy. Anyway, I could go on that forever.
Somebody, one of our listeners saw something that you got involved in. Do you know anything about this? That there was a story going around.
Fu Connor?
Yeah, Fu's been on this program.
Okay, yeah.
Fu Connor.
Not a fan of his. I just want to put it out there.
He runs the Randy Land, doesn't he?
Yeah, he works with Randy.
Yeah.
Gilson, I forget his last name. Yes, but he also has this blog that he sometimes posts to, but it's mostly just like he mostly goes to like events, like nonprofit events and like government events and takes pictures and maybe
I know. I see him.
Yeah, kind of like a society reporter, I guess.
Almost,
would be like
But then on the other hand, so he was reporting that.
So he put out a story on his blog that said that the Post-Gazette Union, the guild, was going to walk out and start plans to start a new paper. Now, this story was sourced, according to Fu Connor, his blog, from one anonymous source that Fu trusted. Great. But literally immediately after he published the story, which he didn't corroborate with anyone, the guild said,
slapped it down.
This is false. This isn't true. Then there were a bunch of other journalists also at the Post-Gazette who are also guild members, but they're not part of the guild leadership, that said, I haven't heard anything about this. And so if you start having reporters coming out and saying, I haven't heard anything about it, your story is almost certainly not true. And you need to realize that as a reporter, that you can't just run on a rumor, especially if it gets struck down. Why would the guild want to squash that rumor? Why would they want to? You have to think like that as a reporter. If they have a vested interest in gaining support for an alleged walkout, they would want that spread far and wide. They would want a bigger press to pick up on it. They would want us to pick up on it. Mm-hmm. They would want everyone else in the area to pick up on it. And so to like run that and then defend it afterwards. So I got in with him on Twitter because I said, this is so irresponsible. This is like this is what one of the biggest problems with the media.
With the fact that we don't have the traditional journalistic, ethical people who are schooled in how to...
Because this is literally the lessons that you learn from is like, oh, wow, this sounds like an explosive story. And I do have one source saying it, but...
That ain't good enough.
If that person is not willing to go on the record, and if you are getting literally the opposite message from other people who would be on that side, you can't run the story. You just can't. It spreads a false narrative, and it's really irresponsible.
Okay, so that's... Can I just read this because this is cool? You know, well, the Justice Committee hearing has begun. Is going on.
Okay.
And, Jerry Nadler is the chair, And I'm being told that he led his opening statement with a quote from George Washington.
Okay.
On
Who?
on who would be a threat to the young democracy they were creating. Here are George Washington's words. When a man unprincipled in private life, desperate in his fortune, bold in his temper, despotic in his ordinary demeanor, known to have scoffed in private at the principles of liberty, when such a man is seen to mount the hobby horse of popularity, to join in the cry of danger to liberty, to take every opportunity of embarrassing the general government and bringing it under suspicion, to flatter and fall in with all the nonsense of the zealots of the day, it may justly be suspected that his object is to throw things into confusion, that he may ride the storm and direct the whirlwind.
Ooh, man, they just wrote so differently.
God, well, because they were educated.
It's a little flowery for my taste, to be honest.
They read. They didn't watch TV.
They didn't have TV. They would have. They would have. He also owned slaves, so just saying.
Oh, please. Okay. Yeah.
Just saying, we shouldn't always romanticize those.
No, but that's a
that's a great.
Absolutely.
That's a great quote, and I think that goes back to your earlier point of the Republicans really circling the wagons around Trump, who admitted to committing crimes. He admitted it. It's not he admitted it multiple times. And to back conspiracy theories and to do all these things. It is because of these larger things around the Republican Party. It is because they know that their support is narrow and probably shrinking, and they know these things deep down, and so they have to try to do something to maintain their control. I think it's like a survival mechanism.
Yeah, but you just wonder about the soullessness of these people.
Yeah, but America is filled with soullessness people. I mean, it's not only filled with them, it's run by them. Because in the way that business has such huge control over our democracy. A lot of these people are soullessness. They see the world as a competition, and they see it as whoever can be the best of the competition wins. I mean, that's how Bezos is. Even though he runs the Washington Post and all those other things, these people still. That's how they believe the world is.
Is it Bezos? I'm always saying Bezos. Is it Bezos?
I feel like tomato.
Really?
I have no idea.
He must. How the hell does he say
I don't know.
it?
You never hear him talk. I never see him say his own last name. Bezos. Yeah. Bezos. No, Bezos. I think it's Bezos.
What do we think? Bezos?
Yeah, let's get into it.
I was reading, there was a just numbing report about how when Amazon, has a standing in a community, mm-hmm. and it does in almost every community now.
Oh, yeah.
How they just
popular company in
destroy it. I mean, they just run roughshod over they don't play nice.
Look what happened here. Look what happened with our, new fulfillment center. The governor, the county executive, we got them incentives to come and build a fulfillment center out in Finlay Township, near the airport. Apparently the unions are alleging that they're not using local contractors. They're not using enough local contractors. They didn't get anything in writing.
Well, there's no one.
Why would they?
Yeah, there's no one more notoriously anti-union than Bezos or Bezos.
Exactly. So they basically, I think it was like a mixture of just the way Amazon operates. They have these companies that they just work with when they build fulfillment centers, and they just thought, oh, that's fine. But obviously, especially in Pennsylvania, it's very, nativist, I would say. But in the way that it says, well, we hire workers from here. We care about our, we really want to care about our local labor unions, and we want them to do the work for our economic expansion. And we got fooled. And I was just complaining about Amazon today on Twitter because
I wish people would stop using them. They're destroying everything.
It's very hard for Americans to stop something that's convenient, you know?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, so we then become party to our own demise.
Yes. We have to take stands sometimes
if convenience is the be all and end all, and it's absurd convenience. I want this and I want it now.
I think it's tied to
what. I mean,
I agree with you, and I actually don't really use Amazon. Sometimes my mother-in-law will buy me something on it or something, but I try not to use it. But I mean, there are times where it's impossible not to, because it's like the only.
That's it.
It's like the only, time you can purchase something. But I think it's tied to this like perfect circle of how we support these things, because,
and then they get tax incentives.
Yeah.
They get all this our money.
Yeah, because they have such sway over everything. They're an incredibly popular company.
They're the richest company, and yet they get aid, welfare.
Yeah.
Okay. If that's not reason to hate their guts, to go out of your way to buy local, to stop this craziness of caring about convenience.
Yeah.
God, look what it's doing to us.
I don't think we would support Amazon as much if our populace wasn't as overworked as it is. I think that's one of the biggest problems, is that we work. For instance, I work like 50 hours.
Yeah, you don't have
50
time
plus
to go
hours
shopping.
a week.
The easiest way to go shopping is and to get your groceries and to, everything. They're going to run everything
and
in
so
our lives.
You feel helpless, so you go, oh, but I need these things,
Yes,
right? And so Amazon comes in and fills that void of, we know people are overworked. We're actively participating in making people overworked.
Wait, their warehouse employees work 10 hours.
I would probably
shifts.
argue that they're non-warehouse employees. I would argue their white-collar workers are probably overworked too.
I knew one, a friend of my son's, who was out there in their headquarters, and he described a culture that was, unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, people sobbing at their desks out of just stress.
That's terrible. And this is what makes me really upset, is that the media, me and others, are responsible for going so easy on Amazon and basically that's starting to change now. But when they first started, so many of these tech companies, we just gave them so much positive praise, no skepticism, all these things. And that signaled to everyone in America that these are benevolent and good companies. Facebook is a bad company. They are a really awful company. They are worse. They are just as bad as Enron. They are just as bad as the Lehman Brothers. They're just as bad as all these companies. Yet we gave them so much positive praise when they first started coming up, that they were making the world a better place. We literally just repeated their corporate dogma, and now we're in a place where they're generally pretty popular, and they're such ingratiated into our public lives that it's hard to take them down, basically, and to make them act better. That would make our country better. Like, we just need to work less. That's like the basis of what America's problem is if people work less, they'd have more time to be participating in democracy. They'd have more time for volunteering. They'd have more time to not shop at bad companies.
You know who's struggling now because of Amazon? FedEx and UPS.
Yeah. And that's how the market works. That's how the market works in America. So many people love to talk about these bridges where it's like, oh, no, it's a bridge, this other thing. No, it's a market share. It's a pie graph. And when one company grows, the other one shrinks.
And no, you're going to see these Ring doorbells. Isn't that Amazon?
That's a different company, I believe. Well, I don't know. Maybe they bought them out. I never know. There's no antitrust law in this country.
They literally, their computing infrastructure underlies American commerce, governmental and communications. It's everywhere. It is an invisible infrastructure that powers our everyday lives. Most of us don't know 95% of what Amazon is doing now. Yeah. It is more powerful than most nation states.
Yeah, it's unaccountable too.
And it's unaccountable.
That's something that people really need to think about. And I know that not that many people go to city council meetings or anything like that, but we have the opportunity at least, right? We at least have the opportunity when something gets really bad, we can change things. We cannot do that if we give everything up to businesses. We have no power over them, you know?
Amazon Web Services. I keep seeing ads for that.
Oh, yeah. So many ads.
Oh, my God.
Ads, too. Man.
AWS. Are you seeing ads? That's Amazon Web Services. It is the largest provider of cloud computing. It's building it says here that everybody uses them, from, major medical operations to investment firms. Even the National Security Agency acknowledges that it relies on AWS for all kinds of
Yeah.
They're in every.
Yeah, they're in everything, and they're still growing. And we're encouraging it. We're encouraging, and this richest company in the world, and they don't want to pay taxes. They don't pay taxes, and we're like, no, yeah, keep growing, and it's all bullshit, honestly. And every time I hear politicians go, well, what about the jobs? What about the jobs? Does anybody ever think, and maybe I'm wrong here, jobs are finite. Like, there's always gonna be jobs for people. Like this idea, we can just create jobs a lot of different ways.
Yeah, but the jobs that are being provided. I mean, they're talking about. There was an article just about Amazon in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Baltimore had a GM plant. They had a
and they had a HQ2 bid, right?
Yes. And they were one of the ones just desperately trying to get
just
Amazon
like Pittsburgh,
to come.
Yeah.
Okay, so Amazon has a number of fulfillment centers there, tons of them.
Yeah.
And people have jobs, but guess what? They're making half as much as they used to make.
With worse hours.
Constant stress.
They track their employees going to the fucking bathroom.
Oh my God. The stress that these people are under, they are literally monitored every second.
And guess what? This is actually really frustrating because I've actually seen commercials for Amazon for workers, and they are basically trying to signal to liberals, by the way, that Amazon is some great company because they're like, they support trans rights or something like, they pay for, give me a fucking break. That is so shallow that it's like, oh yeah, trans rights, blah, blah, blah. First of all, that's not your job, Amazon. Like that is the government's job to just protect people. It's not that hard. We just have to pass the Fairness Act, which already cleared the fucking house. Like it's just, It just makes me so infuriating, and we need to realize, and obviously you know this because you used to work in TV, how much power these ads have over people. That's how they think. Americans think that we're all these super intelligent, let's weigh everything. No, we are swayed by the media constantly. And when TV ads tell us to buy a fucking big ass truck, guess what? Big ass truck sales go up a lot, when they tell us to support Amazon, guess what? Amazon shopping goes up a lot. It's so frustrating. This is, and honestly, there's only a couple candidates that are even talking about this on the presidential stage, and honestly, it should be a world.
Yang is talking about it. Yeah, it is. I'm glad I'm old. I don't want to. I just.
It's scary.
Don't want to live.
No,
it
is
frightening.
Because I think about it all the time, and it stresses me out. I don't know how we sway people to more of I don't know, sway people away. And honestly, it goes back to Foucault a little bit too, in the way that somebody can just post something and it gets shared on Facebook and social media and people are like, oh yeah. And it's not that big of a deal. It wasn't shared by hundreds of thousands of people or something like that, but it was still shared.
It shows how, false information just spreads now.
Yeah, we're very gullible. We are incredibly gullible.
I want to, we've only got, 6 minutes left.
Okay.
But great cover of City Paper this week. It's a takeoff on Ritz crackers, and it's Fitz cracker plant, meaning County Executive Rich Fitzgerald.
It's my boss Lisa's idea. It's really good.
Yeah,
Just
who's
give her
totally
praise.
into the cracker plant being built.
Yes.
And wants more.
Once more, yes.
And so you... Let's explain.
Yes.
It ain't crackers. I mean, when I first heard the term, I thought, what the are they talking about? Because, there used to be a Nabisco plant a few blocks from my house.
That's where Google is now.
Yeah, I know! And it smelled so good in the neighborhood. And so this is, this crackers
yes.
has to do with there's a little plastic pellets
It's
are despoiling the oceans, everything.
It's basically a cracker plant refines natural gas into plastics that can be made into like the bottle here. And so it makes little plastic pellets, and then companies would buy those plastic pellets and turn them into bottles, turn them into car parts, turn them into anything. Anything that's made out of plastic, which is almost everything. And so, but as political observers have noticed, there's been a rift between Allegheny County Executive Rich Fitzgerald, who supports cracker plants and supports fracking, and Pittsburgh Mayor Bill Peduto, who has now come out and said that he does not want to see more cracker plants in the region. He's afraid that the more cracker plants that exist, it will endanger some of the growth we're seeing in the tech sector, in the corporate sector,
because it pollutes.
Because it's incredibly pollutive. The cracker plant that is being built right now is already permitted to emit the equivalent of 480,000 cars. There's only about 900,000 cars that commute in the Pittsburgh region today. So that would increase that number 50% overnight. It's insane.
Oh, and our air is so good.
And our air quality is already one of the worst in the nation.
Yep.
It's consistently in the top 5.
Right.
And it's just one of those things that, like, even if we were eventually to slowly transition away from the Clairton Coke Works plant, the steel facilities that cause a ton of pollution in the area, even if we were to transition away from that, we're basically like, oh, but now let's just replace it with something else, And yeah, it's not steel, it's not coal, but it's still bad. It's still bad. It's less carbon emissions, but it's more methane, and methane is really, really bad for climate change, probably one of the worst. And it's just all these things. And so it was great for Peduto to actually come out and say this is bad. And when you look at the economics, and no one talks about this, and it makes me really upset because when you look at the economics, fracking hasn't created these great jobs that everyone claims that it has. They kept claiming it would create manufacturing jobs, and they still are.
No,
we've lost 10,000 since they claimed that. Give me a fucking break.
Facts. Go away with your pesky facts.
But this is on journalists too, because all the pro-fracking politicians repeat that line from the fracking industry and say manufacturing jobs. And for the longest years, no journalists in the area were saying, what about those manufacturing jobs? And there are really good economists that have been tweeting about this constantly, and I've only picked up on it recently, and I feel bad for not saying it earlier. Anyway, and so I compiled all of the support for the cracker plants. It's actually not as much as pro-fracking as you think it is. It's 11 support, 9 opposed.
11 who?
11 area politicians who support more cracker plants and more fracking, and it's
not in their backyard.
Yeah, but 9 that oppose, and 8 and 8 that are unclear. 34 didn't give an answer. They're afraid. They are so afraid to tackle this issue. How can you be an elected official and not have an opinion on the economic future of the region? I mean, just get a different job.
God almighty. Hey.
Yeah.
I just want to give a heads up, and maybe someone at the paper will be interested.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of George Lang?
No.
He's coming on the show tomorrow.
Okay.
He's had a career as a photographer of major personalities and this and that, and boy does he have stories to tell. So I was just looking at his website, and my God, he's spent time with Warhol, with Sophia Loren.
Oh, wow.
Bruce Springsteen, Jim Carrey, Honey Boo Boo, and Yo-Yo Ma. How do you get from Honey Boo Boo to Yo-Yo Ma? Donald Trump in his heyday, right? And Dennis Rodman, Mac Miller, I think he has the only picture of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Will you stop yawning?
Sorry, I need more coffee.
God.
That's going to be good.
So I don't know.
Listen in.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone here in the arts world
I'll
would like to talk to him. He's
Lisa.
a Pittsburgher, and he's come home.
Okay, yeah, that might be interesting. I think
in fact,
our
some
arts
of his
team.
work is going to be can see it at Mendelssohn Gallery in a few weeks.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I'm just saying, he said Warhol plucked his nose hairs right before he. Warhol seems like such a creep. I'm just sorry. He just makes my skin crawl.
Oh, no.
I am sorry. He makes my skin crawl.
He's eccentric, to say the least.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's eccentric. Well, thank you so much
Yeah.
for your passion and your professionalism and your pesky facts.
Yes, thanks for having me on again, and we'll complain about the media forever.
Okay, that's right. That's Ryan Deto, in case you didn't know, and he is the chief writer for Pittsburgh City Paper. Pick that up.
Yeah, that's a good
okay,
one.
Seriously. Have a good one.
Thanks,
I'll
bye.
see you tomorrow, and tune in. George Lang, all hour. Thank you.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.